Okay, good evening and welcome once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name's Stephen Marshall and this is Bill McIntyre. We Are Marshall. We are just two guys going to have discussions about topics like we've been doing for a couple of weeks now. Just hit a like, share, and subscribe to this podcast so we can continue to grow it and add more content for you in our content area for subscribers. We are also sponsored at this time by MateConnector.com, large dating website out there. Go check it out at MateConnector.com. Sign up and see what it can do for you. The first subject we're going to discuss today, we're going to jump right into DHS Direct Classified Information. That is the Department of Homeland Security. It has directed its agencies to review and assess who has access to classified information. According to an internal memo obtained by CNN, a move that comes on the heels of a leak of highly classified Pentagon documents discovered earlier this year. The memo doesn't cite the leaked Pentagon documents, but is in response to it and intended to avoid distributing sensitive information to personnel who don't need it to perform their duties, according to a source familiar. The memo, dated May 15th, calls on agencies to review and validate the number of personnel who require access to classified national security information, with particular attention given to those having access to sensitive, compartmented information. By the end of June, that includes, for example, employees, contractors, task force officers, and state, local, tribal, and private sector partners. Okay, the reason I brought this up is, why is there a memo being given to the public to let us know that you suck at your job? It's ridiculous. Okay, here we have top secret information that is so pivotal to so many aspects of this country, but they basically just said by releasing this memo, we suck. So we have all this stuff being released. That just reviewing it now, shouldn't this be like something that's done all the time, over and over and over again? It shouldn't need the leak of classified information to get to this point. Again, we are the government of reaction, not pro-action. What do you have to say to that, Bill?
Well, first of all, excellent way to start that segment, and I love what you just said. It's so reactionary. It's amazing, and they don't even take a second to look at the optics of what they're doing. You know, it's like, let's just not lose sight of the fact that we're talking about a Department of Homeland Security, which is the agency that was created in response to 9/11, which was considered to be a massive security leak or a breach. One of the hugest breaches of the whole system was the fact that the agencies that are responsible for monitoring and tracking of all that, they didn't communicate with each other. So there was no information sharing. So no one knew what the left hand was doing. And that was the biggest breakdown of 9/11. They couldn't coordinate the information. And they even admitted that there was issues of, it was ball breaking. We're not going to give you that information because we're the NSA and we garnered it. It's our information. You can't have it, FBI. Well, people are going to die. No, it's our information. It was a breakdown. It was colossal. Okay, so this is the agency that's also in charge of the border. Making our own point here. This stuff is writing itself again, and it is clearly in reaction to a massive leak. I mean, I read today that this information sat on the internet for all to see for weeks. That breach from Cape Cod.
Yeah, they didn't even know it was out there. The media had to tell them.
Now, what I'm taking from this is that the U.S. government truly does not know, or worse, does not care what people's security clearance is. I mean, you are military, okay? What are the ramifications of when the CIA or another agency breaches things like agents and different facilities and compromising information about intelligence on our enemies? That was what was leaked, classified information, and then it revealed that we were spying on our allies. Now that's a Of course, everybody knows we're spying on our allies, but now the allies can just Google what we have on. It's right there. So this is amazing to me. I thought Mayorkas's answer when he was asked why are we doing this, why is it important? He says, "Well, what we're doing, no, what are you doing about it?" So basically, someone should have said, "Okay, Secretary Mayorkas, how many heads are going to roll? Whose heads are they? And when will we see them rolling down the street?" That should have been the question. No, well, what are you going to do about this? We issued a reminder of the delegating of the obligations that guide our employees. You're not employees, you're government employees with respect to the handling of classified info. That's weak and impotent. And yeah, you got more of the specifics of the case, but my overall reaction to it is that this is too much. This is too little, too late. I'm alarmed that a guardsman, I'm not knocking his rank, but why did a guardsman in the Air Reserve on Cape Cod have access to this information? They have to straighten that out.
Well, it's not like he had access to it like that. He's an IT employee, so I'm a software engineer, so I understand I can get data to anything in my company when I'm working on the database. I mean, it's right there for me. So this is what happens for this guy, but that's a problem in itself.
There aren't firewalls in these systems that he simply can't access certain files and certain information.
Well, I'm sure there's a hierarchy of what he can access, but my point being is when you are a database administrator, something like that, which he kind of is, you got access to all the information in the database.
Okay.
You just got to be trusted. The bottom line, you did bring up this kid, and he was part of this, but the bottom line with him, he was just trying to be cool, in my opinion, from what I've read about him. He definitively was not someone that was trying to sell state secrets and commit treason on this country. But what he did was very irresponsible. Unfortunately, it's going to devastate his life. I mean, his life's pretty much over.
Well, he's no Julian Assange, but he did a lot of damage.
Yeah, he did do a lot of damage. But like you said, 9/11. I mean, we had issues on 9/11 with the CIA lacking oversight. And then we got the big point that you pointed out that many people don't really understand. And you did point, this is a big one. The competition that was amongst these agencies forced them to withhold data from each other that could have helped with any number of investigations. So, I mean, competition's good. We all love that.
It could have prevented the attack.
Yeah, it probably could have prevented that and many other things. And the big thing that I have, though, is there's a big lack of accountability, okay? Here you have this kid, 21 years old, that got caught up in this and catalyzed this process to begin, but they shouldn't be announcing it to the public that this is what we're doing. But the bottom line, the lack of accountability to me is what happened to his superior officer? Who was watching this kid? Because I'll tell you this, even though I have access to the database as a software engineer, I still have a director of information technology that knows everything I'm doing, and it's tracked. So that would be me in the private sector. You're telling me they don't have these stop gaps in the government? That just blows my mind right there.
Well, now that you mentioned, I didn't even think about that, but they haven't mentioned the supervisors at all in this situation. And you would think that the first thing they would do is say that, as Monty Python used to say, that person has been sacked.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Lack of accountability. You're only blaming it on this 21-year-old when in reality, where are the higher ranked officers that were around this guy?
Accountability is going to be a running theme through every one of our podcasts, Steve. So
absolutely,
there's no question about
we will
that.
keep banging that drum because we want people to be held accountable. All right, so we're going to go on to the next one. I'm going to let you open this subject up. But I do want to reiterate to everyone, this is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and smash that subscribe button. We continue to grow every day. Our sponsor's been great to us, giving us lots of input and giving us an opportunity to grow. That's MateConnector.com, a large dating website out there that's very inexpensive and offers you all the features of the others at that inexpensive price. But the next subject Bill wanted to discuss today is it's the anniversary of Israel. So what do you have to say on this subject, Bill?
Well, as you know, I tried to introduce a segment with your approval on this about trying to look at this day in history. Something I was fascinated. And Sunday, we were so immersed in the topics of the day that we didn't get to this. So Sunday was actually the actual anniversary, but I still want to talk about it. I guess I kind of want to before I do my whole intro. I want to hear you weigh in on how much of a topic you think this is. The 75th anniversary of Israel is what caught my eye. It wasn't lost on me that Israel and Palestine, which is synonymous with the story in this case, were in the news recently. On Friday, they declared a 5-day peace truce, if you will, after yet another round, countless rounds of fighting. Steve, do you really think the average person knows the history of Israel, how it all came about, why it came about?
No,
I don't have an opinion. I'm wondering what you think about that.
Absolutely not. It's like anything out there. But I have the history here, unless you have it.
Well, I think we both do. I just wanted to point out that significance of the anniversary is because 75 years later, it's still a hot button issue. Okay, that's the thing. And Steve, I'd like to hear what you have. Why don't you start off with us?
Well, I mean, Israel celebrates 75 years since its founding with fanfare. Palestinians mark the same event, though, with mourning. It was during the Jewish state's creation that more than 700,000 Palestinians were forced to flee their homes in what is now Israel. Almost 8 decades on, they lament that event as the Nakba, or catastrophe, with no solution in sight for the millions of stateless Palestinians today or a peace agreement with Israel. Palestinians formally mark Nakba Day on May 15th, the anniversary of Israel's founding in the Gregorian calendar. Okay, that's just basically the history. But my opinion on this is simply this is typical to me of the Middle East. I mean, we are a country that's been around for 350 approximate years. We don't have the infighting like war-wise here. We just have a disagreement of opinions. But you go to the Middle East, and they've been around for thousands of years, yet they can never come to a resolution on anything, and that's where we are with this.
Right. Well, that is why I want to talk about this, because our support of Israel is an extension of the Marshall Plan. No relation, I'm not sure, but anybody who seeks democracy, we will support. And in 1948, under the auspices of the UN, President Harry Truman was the first world leader to recognize Israel 11 minutes after the nation's creation. And the nation's creation essentially when the British said, we're done. The Baruch resolution is over. We're gone. Okay. So this is I'm going to try to keep this brief. Obviously, Israel is based upon the Zionist movement. Okay. In the late 19th century, Jews in the Russian Empire had called for establishment of a territorial Jewish state after during persecution. Of course, we know that went on, and it culminated, of course, in World War II. But in 1897, Palestine was Ottoman controlled. And Palestine was considered the original home of the Jews. And it also has a very, very strong history of being the home of the Palestinians as well, hence the conflict. But after the Russian Revolution, many Jews fled to Palestine, whether it was an approved nation or approved refuge or not. Britain took over Palestine in 1917. They issued the Balfour Declaration, which there was an intent to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Of course, the Arab states protested, and I have to acknowledge that we're talking about it's not just land here. If this is actually their history, then it's understandable. But what they really did was the mandate became that the British would handle this, and they would essentially divide territory. Of course, Palestinians were not happy about the territory they were given, and many battles that occurred after that were over territory, and the borders and boundaries changed quite a bit. So after World War II, of course, the public pressure, especially on the United States, to create a state where Jews could flee persecution, became loud. And in 1945, the U.S. actually joined the Zionist movement. So the cause, if you will. So Britain, unable to find a solution, turned it over to the UN. All right. So basically, the Jews were possessed more than half of Palestine, although they made up less than half of the population. So on May 14th, Britain withdrew, and hence the UN, particularly the United States, as a first nation, 11 minutes after Britain announced they were done, recognized Israel. There was a war the very next day. This was against this is what I thought. It was against the advice of the State Department. Truman's Secretary of the State Department was extremely concerned about Arab blowback. And let's call it what it is, oil was a big concern, even in 1948. So this is where I'm going with this, Steve. Try to make the connection between why I brought that up and where I'm going with this. The connection, the fact that back in 1948 it was a concern, the fact that Arab hostility towards the United States was a concern. 75 years later, look where we are with this situation. It's the same thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's what I ended mine with. I mean, why is it that everywhere in the Middle East there is perpetual war or infighting or issues? Why can't they get along? Is it our fault?
Well, our support, which is considered to be as a detriment in some cases and as a positive in other cases, our support is unconditional of Israel. We've contributed about $125 billion to date to Israel for their security and for their assistance and basically basic security systems and structures. But why I think this is interesting is that there are, let me see, 14, what was the exact number here? 4 countries that do not even recognize Israel's right to exist. And 13 countries do not even accept Israeli passports. This is one of the biggest reasons the United States is always being made connections to Israel, because the problem is that we're considered by some countries that we favor them, that we enable them to do everything. So what are the benefits and what are the negatives of our relationship with Israel? Well, the benefit is it's a democracy in a region that desperately needs stability, of course. So we support them. Yeah. And we also recognize their right to exist. Netanyahu made a famous quote about the war. He said, if we laid down our weapons, if the Arabs laid down their weapons, there'll be peace. If we laid down our weapons, we'd be annihilated. Bottom line, that's what it is, and that's what they're up against. The United States, by extension, for our support of Israel, has angered a lot of the Muslim world, and I think that if you listen to a lot of the rants by some of the mullahs, including Bin Laden when he was making those speeches that were being televised every day in our country. He kept saying how our support of Israel made us imperialist scum while we had to die. So I just thought it was interesting that 75 years later, so little has changed. And we continuously talk about how we're going to come up with an end to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. There is no end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, like I said, the Middle East, there's no one. See, the problem with the Middle East, in my opinion, is religion. Okay, many of these areas, religious zealotry is prevalent. Okay, and that kind of skews your mind, because I'm a religious person, and I know that if I was told that everything that I believed was wrong, or it's enabling other people to do awful things, or anything like that, it would probably bother me a lot, because that's my spirituality, that's my core belief system. So, and
Sure.
these people believe that's way. So I'm in the middle with this, because I feel that Palestine needs to stop attacking Israel, and they need to try to get some peace. Israel's going to hurt them really bad when they get attacked, because they have technology like we have.
The only
I
thing
do.
stopping Israel from just going total ballistic, pardon the expression, is us
It is us,
telling them
but
not to.
we're also the process that's causing them to do anything at all, too. So
Right.
we're kind of in the middle here. I do blame us for some things, but I blame Britain and many other countries that were involved with the creation of Israel, the way it went down.
Sure.
Some like you said, our State Department was against it, so there was obviously probably a better way to do this. It just didn't get done, and unfortunately, the Jews were persecuted terribly. So it's really hard to go against them on this, but it's also really hard to go against the Palestinians, because they did get a raw deal also on this. So I'm
Well, the
for both.
Palestinians want one thing only. They want statehood. Supposedly
Yep.
they've been offered it. Then on many of the treaties that we made, the most important was in '93. Um, there was some kind of agreement with me. Was probably the most um, what I'm looking for, the most amenable to the Palestinians, but it still didn't give them statehood. This is still why they're still fighting. And basically their only answer is, and I'm not going to tell you that I think they're right or wrong. I'm not in a position to say this, but their stance is there is no compromise. We want them out. This is an Arab nation. Bottom line, there is no flexibility there. Israel has given up sections of Gaza and other areas, and they constantly move neighborhoods back and forth between Palestine and Israel. And the thing is, it's really a complex mess. But when you talk about religion, now America, you can't say we're not without a religious foundation. We are founded on Western Christian values, right? So to some people, the extent of that is when you're in court, you say, I swear to God on a Bible, okay, and it's on our currency, but we don't make it so people who don't celebrate Christianity and Western values, and presumably Christian values, if you will, people in this country are free to practice whatever their religious beliefs are. But in an Islamic dominated country, Islam is the law. So we're talking about stonings and unjust imprisonment and no accountability there is the word again for the government and how it treats the citizens. I'm just going to arrest you. What are you going to do about it? That kind of thing. This is where it gets really sticky, because we're trying to impose our entire mentality of freedom of speech and free living in general on a nation that couldn't be more on a doctrine that couldn't be more different than we are if they wanted to be. So that's why Israel is important. I know it's a big subject, and I probably went on way too long about it, but I think it's something that people need to take a look at and understand what the reasons behind it, and what is there for us, and why it's there.
Well, that's exactly right, and I agree. And that's right there. There's a 2 hour content easy for us to lay down all
Oh,
our opinions and the history and what's transpiring on that. So that's something we can talk about down the road. I'd definitely like to revisit this topic in a
okay.
more in-depth fashion, maybe on the back end for subscribers. But that's just the history of Israel. If you folks didn't know, I gave you some. Bill broke down some very specific stuff about it too. And we want them to just get along, everybody live, everybody be happy. I understand that they're going to have problems. The religion is going to be an issue over there, because, yes, they are not flexible or pliable in their religious beliefs. So, with that being said, we're going to move on. I got another subject that Bill wants to talk about. I do want to remind you, this is the We Are Marshall podcast. I'm Stephen Marshall. This is Bill McIntyre. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and go check out our sponsor that gives us this opportunity to do this, and that's MateConnector.com, a large dating site with all the features, but with a very inexpensive price. The next one, I had trouble when I looked up a lot of information on this because this is something that hits me home. You're right. I'm a veteran. So veterans removed from hotels for illegals. So I want you to take over this one because I'm going to end it with my opinion on what you have to say because I've looked at a bunch of stories and I did see, Bill, that there are conflicting reports on this, that it didn't happen and that it did happen. So what do you
Oh, it
have for
happened.
me?
It happened. There's not a lot to the story. The headline tells the whole story. In smaller print, I'll jump ahead to the conclusion, a little bit of a conclusion. They were rehomed, okay? But approximately 24 disabled veterans who had a standard 30-day stay guaranteed to them, at which time there's chance of renewal and different things, and a fairly decent accommodations being paid for by the federal government, were forcibly, well, not forcibly, summarily, if you will, ejected from a hotel in New York. And the bottom line is that the hotel made $100 more per night per person by housing illegals. So I guess I'm supposed to take great comfort in the fact that they were rehomed and didn't end up on the street for a night, but I don't. Okay. So there's some numbers to toss around for yourself. Okay. We're talking about New York says they've only taken in 60,000 people in a year. I really challenge that number. Okay. I think it's way higher, but there's been 4,200 in the last couple of weeks. New York City's shelter system is beyond overwhelmed. It's about to collapse. So even American citizens, homeless American citizens, are being bumped for migrants in shelters and every other accommodation. I think you may have heard, Steve, about a gymnasium that's now housing, like after Katrina when they took over the Saints Stadium. Well, I'm sorry, but now the kids don't have gym class now. I mean, but enough of that. I'm not going to go too far off on this one. But I'm just outraged. So I don't want to steal your thunder, and I hope I don't. But the reason I think this story is important is because I'm sorry, but my overall feeling about this entire illegal alien, and I've heard someone call them criminalians, and I don't want to be harsh, but they are criminals. Okay, they are coming in this country illegally. Okay, that's why they're called illegal. I don't like this undocumented crap. No, they're illegal. Okay, they're being given preferential treatment over second, third, fourth, God only made generation Americans. And I just have to say this. I don't care how many people call me a xenophobe or what, which I am not, and I have you as a character witness if it really becomes an issue. At what point do you say, let's take care of our own people first? We take care of every other country all the time, and we have so many people here that need basic services. So my problem with this whole situation is I looked at it and I said, here we go. People who fought for this country don't have the dignity of being able to stay in a hotel because a hotel makes $100 a night more by having illegals. Take it away, my friend.
Well, it's typical of how the veterans are treated in this country. Okay, veterans are definitively treated worse than anybody that comes in this country illegally. They've got to fight for every scrap that they get, and they shouldn't. I don't think. I mean, I'm not just saying it because I'm a veteran. I'm saying it, and I'm in a good position, so I don't have to worry about this right now. But it could transpire to me later in my life where I need some help from the government that I
Of
served
course.
in the military. Okay, and it disheartens me to say that it's usually people that fought in wars. I didn't fight in a war. I didn't fight in any war, just for the record. I trained on Fort Benning for years. That's it. But the
Yeah.
thing that bothers me is these are guys that fought in wars, okay?
Yeah.
You can sit over here in this country and disagree with what goes on with the war, but they still fought in the war as a representative of this country no matter what.
Absolutely.
Can't blame them for what our leadership does. They should be rewarded for everything they've done. But the
They wrote
one
a
thing,
check up to including their life.
exactly,
Absolutely.
But the one thing that sticks in my craw about this, and I attribute it kind of to how I handled Charlie's school board, my daughter's school board, when they did things. Let's look at this for what it really is. Do we have a crisis of illegal immigration? Yes, we
Oh yeah.
definitively do. Okay. So, did we have a crisis of the pandemic where we had to isolate people because of it? Yes, we
Yes.
did. So, you're going to tell me we came up with all of these alternatives that enabled us to house people in safe, secure areas that had a pandemic and health issue, that we can't do the same for illegals? I mean, I remember that there were boats put in, ships put in New York, and tent cities put up, and all these
Yeah.
things built. Why are we taking veterans away from anything? If we need to do something about this tragedy, then build things like they did during the pandemic to help with it. Okay,
Right.
I don't want to just toss people aside, but I also agree with you on 100% on what you said. We need to focus more on who lives here, who's paying taxes, who's affecting this country, and people that are participating in this country, not those that just continue to come in the wrong way.
Well,
Okay, that's
it gets worse if you don't mind me just adding on to this a little bit.
good.
Um, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, has not changed his stance, and he's been asked this question by the press many times in recent days on being a sanctuary city. So he's talking out two sides of his face. New York City is still a sanctuary city, and then he's saying publicly, "Joe Biden, make it stop. We can't handle this." Okay, so he's sending a very mixed message. But his answer to this is not to stop the flow, not to appeal to I guess what am I even saying? As I'm saying it, I want to punch myself on the nose for this. To the proper authorities, because in this case, the proper authorities aren't doing their job, so that's a useless thing. Okay, but his answer is to shift them upstate. Well, I'm sorry, Steve. Okay, I live in a small town. All right, if someone dumped 15 people in this town without services, without residences, it would be a crisis. Where does a mayor, I guess you could say about Greg Abbott, I told you I'm going to try to be fair on every issue we talk about. Greg Abbott is making a great point, but he's shipping people also to places that didn't ask for people, right? But what's he going to do? He's being invaded. He's one of the border states. He's being absolutely invaded. But to take people and shift them upstate, you're dropping people in other communities, otherwise untarnished communities. And by untarnished, I mean they have a grip on their crime, they have a grip on their services, they have a grip on their budget. They might even have just a general sense of all around security, if you will, for lack of a better word, in which things are functioning as they're supposed to. And he's just going to drop people into this. It's happening all over the country. They just got buses. Here, just go. They don't tell anybody where the drivers are taking them. They just drop them off at bus stops and say, "Hey, you're on your own now," okay? And with no ankle monitors, like we talked about. This is what gets me the most: is that why do people have to deal with this when it's not something they did? Why do communities have to absorb an influx of people? I'm not making any indication, any suggestion about the people themselves. Just people with nothing but an iPhone. Apparently, they all have iPhones. Nothing but an iPhone, okay? And they have no food, no clothing, no sanitary supplies, no connections. Even when they ask to go someplace where they have somebody they know, they're being sent with it where they want to send them, okay? And the community just has to deal with it. That is so un-American.
Yeah, but see, this is a subject I'm going to have to disagree with you on, though. Okay,
Go
because
ahead.
and the reason I do it, and I'm going to bring up a thing. I don't think that Texas should have to bear the burden of this. Okay, and they
No, I
are.
don't either. I'm just trying to be
Okay.
fair.
And you were, and I get that, but I do believe you're going to have to spread them out through the whole country. And the reason I say that, ironically, it's because of something the Democrats said. They're crying about this now, but there's something the Democrats said that makes me say we need to spread this all around. And if you've been paying attention to the homeless plight in this country, You get the Democrat now; they're trying to clean up these tent cities and stuff all over. And I know Phoenix. We did a subject on that. Phoenix is trying to clean up their tent city. Well, the Democrats turn around and say, "Well, if you clean that tent city up, then you remove the visual of the homeless crisis. So then we're not seeing it anymore. It gets forgotten." The same thing goes for this. Okay.
But what about the residents? What about the people that live there?
I mean, it's an unfortunate thing for the residents, but why should only the residents of Texas bear this burden? I don't.
No.
Feel
See,
fair.
I'm going a step further though. I don't want them coming in at all.
Well, you're not, but we're not going to stop that. I agree with you. I like Trump actually did a good job on the border, and
95% reduction in crossings.
I'd like more of that, but we're not going to get that with what we're dealing with. So with what we're dealing with, I still then don't believe that only Texas or California or Arizona or New Mexico should deal with the burden of this. This needs to be spread across the country, and it's a good thing, Bill, that it is, because yes, now you're going to see people that never saw the crisis on the border. It's right in their home, and they're now going to say, "Listen, Joe Biden, enough is enough. You need to do something." So I think there'll be a good effect down the road. But yes, you're right. It is invasive to some people.
But yet they're here. They're gonna procreate, anchor babies away. Okay, they're gonna end up just having a devastating effect on the population. They're not going to answer the census. They're going to end up just destroying the hospitals and the schools and everything else that people pay a decent percentage of their earnings for taxes that aren't even going to be delivered on those services. And let talk about the possibility that even a percentage of these people might be criminals, which, come on, let's face it, we know that element is there, right? I'm not making a generalization. I'm not being a Trump and saying they're all rapists and murderers. I mean, let's face it, there's a criminal element there. Communities are going to be affected by this, and I just don't see why anybody has to put up with it. I understand what you're saying. You're saying because Texas shouldn't bear the brunt. I made probably a stupid statement in saying that Texas is making a mistake. I was only trying to be fair, saying that technically he's doing it too, but as a border state, he can't be expected to accommodate all these people. But
you did.
I mean,
you
Steve,
did say that, though. You did say that.
Yeah, but this is years, though, Steve. Years of tens of thousands at the minimum every single day. How can we begin to support that?
We can't. There's a major crisis on the border, and this is what I'm saying. But if you are living in, say, I don't know, somewhere in Maine, okay, we'll say Maine.
Yeah.
This issue never gets dropped in your lap. You kind of think it doesn't really exist.
Actually, it did. In Westbrook, they had a large Somalian influx.
Well, I'm
kind of dropped in the community.
You got Maine, who's really disconnected from the real issue, okay, and it's a Democrat state, really, And then here you're having all this, and they need to see it too. It needs to be them, and then maybe like a guy that I love, his podcast, Dan Bongino, says, then maybe things will get bad enough that people will get outraged and actually do something about it. So that's what I'm hoping.
Well, DeSantis, when he dropped that handful of people on Martha's Vineyard, made more visibility to this issue than anyone ever has.
And that's the point. That was a good thing to do.
Yeah. All the people in the vineyard were people who would say, no, we love everybody. Sure, bring people in. Oh, no, we don't want them here.
Right.
They took care of that fast. Yeah. But they just shipped them away, Steve. They didn't do anything about it. They shipped them away,
Yeah. I mean, this is another subject that we could do hours on because there's so much material with it. And
I probably did too much on it. I apologize.
No, it's fine. But I do think that we need to spread it out amongst the country. And my hope, like I said, is that these other areas see it instead of just the southern states dealing with it. And they say enough is enough and we really get something done.
I just have a problem with communities that go out, that are successful in managing their own communities and thriving. I don't mean rich or what. I just mean just they're functional and then all of a sudden they're just being invaded for something they didn't ask for, Yeah, I guess what your point is that eventually someone's going to do something. I just don't know what and I don't know when.
But your point there about them things, neither did the communities in Texas. They don't want this.
No,
You know what I mean?
I want to distance myself from that. Texas has
I-
every right as a border
exactly.
state, Arizona as well, and you know they're crying to Biden right now, and he's not listening. So
Well, let's segue into another thing. The next few subjects are going to be a referendum on Joe Biden, in my opinion. So
sure,
again, this is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our big sponsor, MateConnector.com, a large dating site for an inexpensive price. Go see who you can find on there for yourself so you can enjoy your life with a significant other. But the next subject I want to get in here is the IRS whistleblower removed from the case. Now, this just blows my mind. This, to me, is third world country. This is where we're starting to see our government actually do things to persecute people and not let the truth of matters come out. An IRS whistleblower who claims the Justice Department interfered with the Hunter Biden criminal probe says he and his entire investigative team are being removed from the investigation, according to a letter sent Monday by his attorneys to Congress. Tom Devine, a lawyer who has represented thousands of whistleblowers during the last 40 years, said it would violate the Federal Whistleblower Protection Act if the agent were to be removed from the investigation because of his disclosures. Quote, that's considered a significant change in duties and working conditions to remove you from a case. And if it's because of your whistleblowing, that would make it a violation of the law, said Devine, who is the legal director for the nonprofit Government Accountability Project, a whistleblower protection and advocacy organization. Devine said even if the Justice Department believes it removed the agent and his team appropriately, there's a reverse burden of proof required to prove he wasn't being retaliated against, which is very hard to meet. So, in my opinion, they're not going to meet this. This is going to be a violation of the law. Okay, and it doesn't look good on any level. And Biden shouldn't even be involved. And I'm going to believe that he's definitively involved in having them remove these people because I don't think they would just do it willy nilly. And now we go. The reason I say that is this: we're going to get into some subjects that touch upon stuff like this next. But Trump was getting investigation for collusion, okay? He could have at any time fired Robert Mueller and
yep.
stopped that investigation.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
But
Thank
he
you.
did not. He didn't do
Right.
anything. He let it go, even when his name was getting muddied through the water like nothing. And we're going to get towards the end of this podcast into the report on what happened there. So my outrage is, but Joe Biden, stay out of it. If you did something wrong, you're going to pay the penalty. Enough is enough. You may not get prosecuted by the Justice Department because they're in your pocket, but we, as the people, want you exposed for what you are. We want the truth out there. I don't care if you're a Republican, independent, or a Democrat. If you are breaking the law and doing something against this country, you should pay for it. And if there's a whistleblower coming forward, he deserves the protection of this act, and he deserves to get his story delivered out there. What do you say, Bill?
I can't add a whole lot to that. First of all, you stole my first and probably biggest takeaway when I looked at the fact that is absolutely a change or reduction in job duties, and that is a criminal offense. That is, when I was a case manager for recovery patients, we talked about FMLA all the time. Yep. And I had people that were with me who were concerned about their jobs, and I would have to explain to them, listen, FMLA, it's federal. You're protected. You not only can you not be fired, but you can't even get demoted. They would take such great satisfaction in that. Well, the whistleblowers get the same basic courtesy or luxury or right. That's all it is. It's a right. The whistleblower is, depends on what side of the fence you're on. It's a good thing or it's a bad thing. The whistleblower is a major part of our system now. And it is a protection given, and it is a violation. It's a clear one. So I don't know how much of a sentence it will carry. I don't know how much of an outcome it will create, but that is a possible outcome. But if I'm understanding this story correctly, are we talking about a weaponization of the justice system again, aren't we?
Undoubtedly, I think it's
Okay.
prevalent.
Well, another common theme. Either we talk about the same shit too much, or this stuff is just everywhere. Because this is taking an agency, the Justice Department, was supposed to be an individual entity that follows the rule of the written law, and that is it. And I mean, what's next? Hey, Hunter, go pick 12 of your friends. We're gonna get your jury ready.
Oh yeah.
Is that a logical assumption that that's the next step here? And why is this a bigger story? That's my big question for you. Why is this not a bigger story?
I mean, this is the biggest story going on, and we're going to end the podcast with one of the biggest stories in the
Well,
history.
I think this should be a bigger story because this is clearly an overreach of executive power. Donald Trump
wait till we
was smart enough to know the optics. Trump was smart enough to know the optics of firing Mueller, but he sat there and he took it. And he went to see wanted to see where it went, and he wrote it out. And he took some lumps over that. He didn't fire anybody. Okay, and he should get some credit for that now.
He should, exactly, but you're not going to see that happen. But anyway,
well, you and I are going to give it to him.
Yeah, this is why we're doing this. But now we got a theme going forward on a few things that are going to follow, segue nicely with this. Again, this is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our sponsor, MateConnector.com. See if you can find a significant other. And we're going to jump right into these next subjects. The first one is the Espionage Act. An old piece of anti-spy legislation is back in the headlines after the FBI searched former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence for classified materials they believe he took from the White House. The FBI has cited violations of the Espionage Act as a catalyst for its document seizure and reported uncovering materials marked top secret SCI. Among them was a grant of clemency for famed Trump associate Roger Stone. After unsealed documents revealed the FBI findings and warrant for the search, Trump claimed he declassified all the documents prior to leaving office. FBI released documents that revealed the Justice Department is investigating Trump for violations of the Espionage Act, obstruction of justice, and criminal handling of government records. In response, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul took to Twitter on Saturday to call for the repeal of the Espionage Act. Okay, and basically he would want that repealed because it hasn't been put into play for presidents in situations like we ran into. And then we had Joe Biden with 185 boxes of top secret information at different locations all over the place, okay? We started this podcast out with the Department of Homeland Security looking into securing top secret or classified data better. Here we are again. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm not going to defend Trump on this one. I'm not going to defend Biden on this one. I'm not going to defend Pence on this one. And those are the three recently that we know got caught with classified information. And from my understanding, some of that was called SCIF top secret information, okay? And my understanding of SCIF stuff is it's not supposed to leave the room it is in. So basically, we've got two presidents and a vice president that stuffed top secret documents in their pants, bro, and left that room. There's no other way it got out. So how are we going to revamp our classified information stuff if we got presidents and vice presidents pants and classified information? And then we're going to revamp the act to try to protect the presidents and the vice presidents. Honestly, no one should be protected. It's classified information. You do something wrong, deal with the ramifications. Go ahead, Bill.
Wow. Okay. Let me see where to begin on this one. Nice setup, man. You got the assist going. I just got to make the basket now. Well, geez, this is a tough one. It's not tough because it's really blatant. But yes, every story seems to have the same thing. And now, I'm not mistaken, Trump spoke pretty eloquently about the classified documents at the town hall, correct?
Absolutely.
And he was talking about the boxes and all that. If they're not important, why do you stuff them in his pants?
Exactly.
First question, okay? And this is why, and I'm not by any means suggesting that only a Democrat would do this. This is why I get so concerned about these backroom deals that are made for influence, because what is being bought? That's my concern. I don't care as much about why somebody will get $100 million from China as to what it was in exchange for. That's what I worry about. I mean, you hear about massive real estate holdings, one right next to a military base, okay, from China. Just an example. I'm not going to go off track here, but when all these deals are being made and all this top secret stuff is happening, when you're taking a document home, it's almost kind of like you want to show it to somebody and you want to work something out with it. And listen, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Would you? And would you be really surprised if you found out that every one of those things was the underpinnings and the backbone of a shady deal of some kind, which we sold some part of our country's soul? I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised at all. And like you said,
no.
What reason do you have to stuff it in your pants or take it anyway?
Exactly.
What's the point?
If you're going to tell me that the boxes sitting next to your Corvette are meaningless, well, if they say classified on them, they didn't stamp that there for no reason, Joe. They're there. And Trump still really, I got to ask, he can downplay his involvement all he wants, but he had a lot of boxes, and I don't know any more than anybody else does exactly how much of it was considered to be top secret on all that. But why did he take it with him? It's keepsakes from the White House. Did he take a couple of ashtrays too? I mean, I don't know. So you brought this up, the Espionage Act, on the same day that it is the anniversary of the Sedition Act, which was 2 months after the Espionage Act in 1917. So I don't know if it's anticlimactic to even talk about that or not right now. But it's a powerful subject.
Well, we won't even go into any. We won't mention the sponsor of the podcast. Let's segue right in to our next subject, the Sedition Act. And like you said, on May 16th, 1918, the United States Congress passes the Sedition Act, a piece of legislation. Just listen to this; it blows my mind.
I know, me too.
Legislation designed to protect America's participation in World War I. Along with the Espionage Act of the previous year, the Sedition Act was orchestrated largely by A. Mitchell Palmer, the United States Attorney General under President Woodrow Wilson. The Espionage Act, passed shortly after the U.S. entrance into the war in early April 1917, made it a crime for any person to convey information intended to interfere with the U.S. Armed Forces prosecution of the war effort or to promote the success of the country's enemies. Aimed at socialists, Bernie Sanders, pacifists, and other anti-war activists. The Sedition Act imposed harsh penalties on anyone found guilty, listen to this, of making false statements that interfered with the prosecution of the war, insulting or abusing the U.S. government, the flag, the Constitution, or the military, agitating against the production of necessary war materials, or advocating, teaching, or defending any of these acts. It sounds like the Democrat Party is doing almost everything on this list right now. So I'm
Thank you.
What is going on? Here we have Hillary Clinton doing things wrong, Adam Schiff doing things wrong. These are crimes with under this Sedition Act and the Espionage Act. I mean, I don't want to just pick on Democrats because I'm sure we could find a slew of swampy Republicans too. But the point being is we're in right now going on these subjects in a pattern of espionage being conducted against our country, classified information being mishandled, attacks against this country from socialist areas, a pacifist coming crying out all over the place that we should just back down from everything, kind of like the Obama apology tour. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore with these things breaking down all over the place. You're right. There is a theme with everything we're doing with this podcast that things are breaking down and there's no accountability. this country is going in the wrong direction, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, imagine my joy when I was going through my daily, hey, what happened this day in history this morning, as I always do, and I see this, and I see the connection to the topics that we're looking at and we're discussing, and I look at this, and I look at the time period. There's a couple different directions you can go with this, but this was, and it was recognized at the time also. Okay, this was Wilson actually said a quote. He said, "Those who are disloyal to this country by the standards of this law, okay, had sacrificed their own civil liberties."
Yep.
Okay. Now, and then you listed, so I won't do it again, the criteria for what a seditious behavior was, which is what I would call any coffee shop in America at any time, at any given day. Okay, you got your pacifists, you got your socialists, you got your peaceniks, you've got your anti-government people, you have, and I suppose we probably have I think more than ever, we have a good element of anarchists also. So we got the people who are saying not happy things about our government. Okay. Well, if I'm not mistaken, that is what makes this the United States of America. You can say those things.
Yes.
Okay. So the United States has some shameful history. Anybody who's going to look at you and say, "Oh, the United States is just a beacon of fairness," no. We've imposed governments. We've done some bad shit in our history, and we had, what we did against the Indians in the Civil War, and what we did with the internment camps of the Japanese citizens of World War II, and McCarthyism, in which lives were just summarily ruined for no reason and with no accountability. There's that word again, by the people who did it. This is another shameful part of our history in which we were so afraid that the people of our country would not get in line to now, this wasn't the isolationist era. The isolationists really gained popularity in the 1930s, but there was a strong undercurrent of isolationism in this country at that time. We did not see why we needed to get involved in stopping the antics of Germany, which, of course, instigated World War I and began World War II. But to be so proactive as to say, if you dare not support our war efforts in Europe, then you're un-American. The First Amendment implications of this are just mind-blowing to me. And this is when the Constitution was in better shape than it is now. Because now the Constitution is apparently a fluid document that can be changed whenever you don't like something. Back in the 1900s, people actually considered at that time to be a valid document. Okay, so this is an interesting subject for a lot of things, but especially when you talk about the fact that Trump's being investigated on the Espionage Act of 1917, and then they added the Sedition Act in 1918, and then you talked about just an abject stifling, crushing of civil liberties. Which, I'm not a card member of the ACLU, but I'm never going to forget that this country is built on the fact that you can be and believe what you want to believe. And if you don't believe in war, hey, George Bush took a tremendous hit in his popularity when he got us into a war, too, actually. And you know what? He said to people, you have the right to criticize this. And that's where the whole hearts and minds things came in. But this was such an interesting thing to read because, again, ninth grade history. You look at this, you don't think much about it. But then when you get older and you see how things are playing out in front of us, the first takeaway is we haven't changed very much, have we? And the second takeaway is, man, it's just getting worse.
It's absolutely getting worse.
Who's shaking the jar right now, Steve?
Right now, I'm completely baffled at what's going on in this country.
I love the face you just made. That face just spoke volumes, man.
But now we're going to get into the big story today, okay?
Oh, yeah.
I do want to remind you all, this is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our sponsor, MateConnector.com. Sign in and check out the inexpensive features that this site offers in comparison to the others at a much cheaper price. But the next one is really, after following that stuff, this is a violation of all of those acts we just went through. Okay. And then we have we've done conversations on headlines and how a Democratic media will headline something completely different. Okay. This next one is the Durham report. Okay. Durham is an attorney that's been investigating out of Connecticut the inception of the Trump collusion rumor, statement, investigation by Mueller. Okay. And he put a report out which delved into all the important aspects of the whole investigation of Trump collusion. And this first line is going to sum it all up for you. All a scam. Everyone knew it was a scam. The FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, President Obama all knew this was trumped up by Hillary. It was approved by Hillary, and it was known to be false by Obama. Yet they still continued with the charade. This report clearly states that there were a lot of acts to skirt the law to try and muddy Trump. You had a story, a dossier that was put together by this gentleman Steele, who was a British intelligence officer at one point.
Who was paid millions for this, by the way.
By the FBI to try to corroborate the information within it, and he still couldn't. And then Deschenko, the gentleman that gave information over to a DNC lawyer about some pee-pee tape stuff that happened in some hotel and thought that the Russians would be able to use it against Trump, wasn't even told this by Deschenko, but he said that he was. Okay, so this DNC attorney made something up, delivered it to Deschenko, then Deschenko delivered it to Steele. It's put into this report, and then they lied on a Pfizer application. I mean, everything I'm saying right now falls under the Espionage Act, the Sedition Act. All these things are being done that no one's doing anything about. And the worst,
the stars lined up for this podcast, didn't they?
They absolutely did. But the worst part about this is there are, in my opinion, on what I've read in this Durham report, heads should roll. People should be getting prosecuted or going to jail. But you're going to see nothing happen out of this. This is probably the largest travesty in the history of the United States. It's probably the biggest crime syndicate thing going on ever in the history. This makes Watergate look like someone running by a lemonade stand and stealing 5 cents off the table and taking off. I mean, it's unbelievable. So what do you have to say about this Durham report?
This is like what Hillary did basically was like what George H.W. did in 1988. He brought up flag burning to get everybody off of what was going on, the real stories. Hillary's emails, before she could bleach bit all of it, was the story of the day. All right. And then it was pretty much revealed that her likability was something between fingernails on a chalkboard and having to get a colonoscopy, and Trump was going to beat her on the issues. Then they really brought out the big guns. I'm outraged. We had to wait, not in any particular order, but we had to wait as long as we did to hear this, that nothing's going to be done. I mean, I once had a friend. I am able to be friends with people who don't agree with me. I was talking about Donald Trump during first and second year of his administration, and this guy looks at me and he goes, "Russia, Russia, Russia, Russia." I'm paraphrasing. And I looked at him and I said, "What?" He says, "Oh, he's in bed with the Russians." I said, "Based on what?" And there it was, no evidence. And all these years later, I'm not vindicated personally, but I said, like I say to everybody else, where's the proof? Steve, if you want to go to a police station and say, I want to file charges against this guy, well, what do they do? Well, he did this. Where's the evidence? Well, I don't have any. They're going to send you packing. The Justice Department, in order to initiate a criminal complaint in a local police department, you have to present a reasonable set of evidence. Okay? And this is the FBI. that did this. They had no evidence. They knew it. So I'm sorry, but it means that here's the puppet master, and then all of a sudden here is this independent agency, this neutral agency, the law of the land, just dancing for dimes and just doing what they're told and just wasting resources, money, time at the expense of I mean, do you realize that one of the biggest reasons that I had told a friend the other day that I almost don't want Donald Trump to run again was because I don't want the distractions of the Democrats just doing everything they can to tear him down every second of every day? This is a real thing, okay? My mother saw this. She laughed because every single day I kept saying, just leave the guy alone. Let him fail. Let him succeed as president. But just enough with these stupid distractions. The Steele dossier, the golden shower tape from Russia, all this crap. Anybody with half of a shred of a piece of lettuce of intelligence knew that none of this was possibly true. Everybody knew this. There is some Democrats who knew this, okay? And they clung to it. Oh, the Russians and all this stuff. And to find out what we already knew, but it's still somehow still shocking, there was absolutely nothing to base this massive, costly, in so many ways. Like I said, it cost the credibility of an administration. It cost resources. It cost time. It cost expense. We could be doing other things. It's a tragedy. What's that?
It cost an election.
It did. And I am just outraged. I don't even feel vindicated. I'm past that. I'm just disgusted at how an agency that we look to look at facts and make decisions based upon evidence and was able to be manipulated in such a way. And I don't know if it's a bigger word than outraged, but I know nothing's going to come of it. Adam Schiff was one of the biggest ones out there. Shifty Schiff was out there just pushing this Russian collusion thing like his life depended on. Jerry Nadler, Crazy Pelosi, all these people they were staking their political careers on this, and nothing's going to happen to any of them over this. And I don't even know what I want to happen to them. Maybe I want them be dragged out in their boxer shorts in public and have a sign around their neck and a bandana wrapped around their mouth that says, "I'm a liar." I don't know, just something, like they used to do in the old days. Just to show that there's some penance for this. So you have a lot of the specifics that I didn't get too far into. I just looked into the nuts and bolts of it. But yeah, nada, nothing, zip, zero. It's embarrassing.
Well, the FBI agent Peter Strzok, who catalyzed this whole process, is ridiculous. He was just on a talk show after this was released, doubling down on it. Dude, Adam Schiff today doubled down on his comments again. This is the problem I have with all this. Is someone going to get prosecuted? Probably not. But I love the exposure. And do we need someone to get prosecuted for it to be valid or to do something more? Probably, but we're not going to get that because you still have people that vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats and will say, see, no one got prosecuted, so there's nothing there. That's the problem. And then
how many people are going to double down on this, though? What's the View going to say tomorrow besides cluck, 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 keep my eggs warm?
Keep your eyes peeled and ears open for that, because that will.
But are they gonna double down on this stuff, though? I mean, I mean, there's nothing stupider than knowing the truth and then insisting on the lie. It takes a situation in which you might have some credibility and say, okay, I got caught up in the moment, I was wrong. But when you double down, like the flat earthers, they're like, oh, no, the earth is flat. Never mind that photo taken from the space station, At what point is it about, well, I don't even want why I'm even asking this rhetorical question. At what point is it about the truth?
It's never,
you and I want the truth, and we're never getting it.
Party wanting to get elected, and that's it. It's all about power.
Power is the rule of the day, but it's like it's gaining of, controlling of,
It's
Destruction in the name of?
gaming the power. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Power for the sake of power.
we're going. Yeah, exactly. We're going a little long-winded here today, but that's okay. We had a lot of stuff to cover that segued right in. And as I always like to do, I like to end my podcast with a good story, maybe two. Bill says he has one today, I think. So I'm going to start with mine. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And go check out our sponsor, MateConnector.com. Now, this story I have is a travesty, okay? And I do believe that our judicial system is broken too. I believe our prison system is broken, and I believe we've got to do some more. And I don't like, and I do want to have a big podcast with you on those two subjects, the judicial and the prison system, because I think we're going to have some views, but we're going to clash on a few, which I think will be good for this podcast. But anyway, this man was freed after 28 years in prison. Lamar Johnson, 50 years old. So think about it. He's 50 now. He lost the majority, best part of his life. How do you ever give that back to someone? He walked out of a St. Louis courtroom a free man after a ruling by Judge David Mason on Tuesday. The judge said he acted after two witnesses had provided clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Johnson was innocent. They came forward after 28 years? No, that's not what happened. He had been convicted of murdering Marcus Boyd in 1994. Mr. Johnson was visibly moved when the ruling was announced, while his supporters started cheering and applauding. This is overwhelming, said Mr. Johnson after leaving the courtroom. Last year, attorney Kim Gardner had filed a motion seeking the release of Mr. Johnson after conducting an investigation together with the Innocence Project nonprofit legal organization, and they got him freed. They found out with their investigation that there were two witnesses that would have got rid of this conviction 28 years ago. So what happened here? Okay, I don't want to go somewhere where I may, but the man is black, Bill. Did the officers 28 years ago have some bad thoughts in their head to get a conviction and thought it would be easy because it was a black poor man? I mean, I'm not someone that ever plays racial, but when
you're asking, is it possible? Yes.
Is it possible that transpired? And I think that's a question we should answer. I mean, we don't know.
We're not going to like the answer, Steve.
Yeah, and I believe that it probably was. But another really good part of this, I don't want to muddy it anymore with that. I just want to bring that question in. This is a great story. He did get out. But the best part of it, there was this elderly woman that was his pen pal the whole time he was in jail. Okay? And they had a reunion when he got out. She finally met the man that she believed was innocent his whole life, wrote to him, and they met afterwards. What a wonderful story. I mean, it's great for her to have seen the guy that she backed up all this time. It's great to see that the guy got out, but I don't want to end it bad. But how do you recover 28 years of a life that missed the middle of it?
That's why I stopped short of calling it a feel-good story, because it's a travesty. And I think there's a lot more of those out there. I think that the judicial system is flawed. I remember watching All in the Family a long time ago, and an episode of where Edith was on the jury, and Archie, I can't remember the math how he did it, but he lists, this many people did this, and then a dingbat. He always called Edith a dingbat, and he was basically saying that the jury system is flawed. Okay, a jury of your peers, yes. Well, what if your peers are idiots? It happens. Okay, it does happen. It's not on paper. It's a beautiful system. It checks all the boxes of fairness and equity and giving people the ultimate shot to prove their innocence. But in actuality, juries are manipulated. Juries are wrong. Evidence can be manipulated. And let's face it, never mind the racial component. There's so many ways that so many bad cops, and I'm not suggesting that it's even a statistically large sample, but yes, there are bad in every profession. there's been so many. I mean, look at Law and Order. How many seasons does Law and Order do? And how many episodes focused on a corrupt police officer, where someone said, something like, well, this guy, he may not have done it, but he's going to do something else. So he might as well go to jail now. And then nobody thought twice about it, So it is a good story in that he might not have been released, and an innocent man might have died in prison. So it's a wonderful story, and yeah, it's a topic for more than one podcast if our listeners could even tolerate that.
Easily.
But they get it right too, Steve, and that's what we have to focus on. You know that they get it right often enough.
Oh, trust me, I know that. But
people are fallible, dude. People are fallible. It's not
beings.
Perfect.
Yeah, but the good things I got out of this is thank you to Kim Gardner, the attorney of the Innocence Project. Great stuff. The Innocence Project is another great organization, in my opinion.
Yeah, there can't be enough groups like that.
Yep, they've freed some people that don't deserve, that shouldn't be in jail and didn't commit a crime. And then the biggest one I want to thank is that old woman for being true to a true person, writing into this gentleman, giving him some hope, and then being there by his side when he gets released.
She may have been the one thing that kept him going.
Yep, she may have been, and that's a wonderful thing. But I want to point out this too, because I did point out the racial component of possibility, but the racial component in the end of this story, which is wonderful, this elderly woman was a white woman that took an interest in a black convict that was in jail for the rest of his life for a murder and stuck by him. So if you people out there feel racism is prevalent in this country, this is a story that shows you it is not.
And well, there's another podcast right there, okay? Because we're being told every day that racism is everywhere, and it's not all about race, and that's exactly. That's another really huge thing that is unfortunately it's a media thing.
But that's how we're going to end the podcast. Yeah. I loved that it was this elderly white woman who was probably in an era that was against some of this stuff, and she then does this for the guy. Wonderful. So I appreciate you all listening. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our sponsor, MateConnector.com, and look for us for the next episode, and have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.